Hey everybody, welcome back to Council Sessions. And I am Dave Cottingham here with Cyber Ren, Martin Donaldson. How are you, sir?
I am awesome. How are you?
Happy Star Wars Day.
Yes, happy Star Wars Day.
Yes. Wanted to put together another episode. We've got our normal Inside the Force weekly episode out there with me and Hannah right now, where we talk about all the Star Wars news that's out there right now. We dive a lot into the new book that came out called Star Wars Timelines.
Oh, yeah.
I was kind of talking to you about that a little bit. And then we mainly talked about Star Wars Day a little bit, what Star Wars kind of means to us and things like that. So go check that out. That's out there in the podcast feeds. This episode I'm actually putting out there on the podcast feeds as well, just so that everybody can experience it on Star Wars Day. Normally, Council Session is just going to be on YouTube, but wanted to throw it out there for everybody to experience. So go check that out. On this episode, kind of in the spirit of the timelines, I wanted to get Martin's thoughts on these new eras that we've been introduced to, especially since Star Wars Celebration.
Right.
Basically, there's 9 eras out there that have been given to us, sent to us, and probably going to be experiencing a lot more stories and a lot more content coming from these particular areas of the timeline. So just to break them down real quick, it's been out there, but just to break them down again real quick, there's 9 of them going all the way back to the beginning. You've got Dawn of the Jedi now. You've got the Old Republic, which a lot of people are familiar with, but it's now canonized. It's now being recognized. Not necessarily all the stories, but that era, the Old Republic. The High Republic, which is getting dived into a lot right now with the books and the comics, and then soon to be the Acolyte TV show. Then you've got Fall of the Jedi, which gets into the prequels. Reign of the Empire, which is a lot of where Bad Batch and Obi-Wan and Andor take place.
Right.
Age of Rebellion, which is the original trilogy. New Republic, which is where Mando and Book of Boba Fett and Ahsoka are. Rise of the First Order, which is the sequel trilogy. And then you've got Beyond Episode 9 with what's going to be called the New Jedi Order, which is the new movie that we're going to get that has Rey in it. So, Martin, now we already have content in some of these areas, obviously, but now that we have seen these eras and we've got these announcements coming and things like that, just a couple questions. One, which era of these 9 are you most excited about?
That's the first question?
First question.
All of them. Are we done here?
You got to pick. You can't do that.
Well, you kind of sprung this on me, not too long ago. So I've had only a short time to think about it. But as you were talking, I was reading the titles of all of them and trying to process really quickly. Which would I be the most excited about? I'm going to have to say the New Jedi Order. The very latest one. Because a lot of our listeners, a lot of your watchers may have heard that I love Rey
Yes.
Skywalker. I think she is phenomenal. She's a character that you fall in love with within 5 minutes of meeting her, and it just carries through the trilogy. Whether you're a fan of the new movies or not, Rey herself and the way Daisy Ridley played her, she's one of the best actors I think Star Wars has ever had. She's so expressive and so emotional and just has a huge range. And I really, really enjoyed and appreciated that about her. But what I think the sequel trilogy didn't allow was for her to really expand. Like, it's like the first 3 movies were still kind of the beginning of her story. Like the introduction, Luke Skywalker seemed to have much more growth over his 3 movies than she had. And it felt like by the time she finished her story and she's on Tatooine and she's staying at the old Skywalker ranch and she's burying her lightsabers in the sand. It just felt like, okay, now we know who you are, but what are you going to do? And that's why I want to see more. What is Rey now going to do? Whether it's build a new Jedi Academy, she's just going to be a moisture farmer. Like, what is she going to do? There's so much potential for her now to continue on and grow. And because if you imagine the time from the original trilogy to when we finally catch up to Luke again, when she finds him on that lost island, I mean, the amount of knowledge, the amount of stuff that he did adventuring around the galaxy, hunting down old Jedi texts and temples and artifacts and all that kind of stuff. She now has that amount of time herself to go wander the galaxy, to go dig up more stuff, to learn, to grow, to strengthen her own use of the Force. And that just excites me, that there's just so much potential there. So couple that with Rey being as amazing as she is, I will pick the new Jedi Order.
Okay, interesting. Yeah. It's probably a toss-up for me in between two of them. So I was having a hard time pick one being the new Jedi Order, like you said, but the other one for me is, which is the one I'm probably going to go with, is honestly Dawn of the Jedi, the beginning.
Oh, we're bookending it.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've always been fascinated to know when this all started, how it all started, how far back. And we do know, especially with this book, we do know when it all started. Because at the beginning of this book, it has introduced, now we learned it from Celebration also when they talked about this movie. But this talks about it being in 25,025 so 25025 BBY is the birth of the Jedi. So a little over 25,000 years before episode 4 is when the Jedi started.
So is that like the very first person that discovers the Force, taps into the Force, becomes the first Jedi? Like what? I wonder what that means.
I think it's about the first person to discover what the Force is and how to use it, and then uses it to develop the religion of the Jedi in a sense.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we're going to be getting in these movies, centered around this time in Dawn of the Jedi. So, there was a comic series that came out a few years ago, back in, I think, 2010, 2011 or something like that, that it was called Dawn of the Jedi. And it started that route of introducing us to the first Jedi Order and Dark Jedi and things like that.
Yeah.
I don't know when that took place. I think it took place roughly about 20,000 years before, but I think this even goes back a little bit further now. So, yeah, it's opportunity. I know Rey's a good character and exciting to see her come back, but you go back 25,000 years, you're definitely introducing all new characters.
Yeah.
It's a whole different look to the universe. I mean, I believe things are relatively the same. Like there's hyperspace travel and things like that that's happening still. I mean, I think worlds are connected. I don't know if there's a republic necessarily, because it doesn't describe this as I'm sure there's some type of government, but seeing that, maybe seeing how Dark Jedi come about, or even the Sith, the birth of the Sith possibly. Because I don't know if we know exactly when that happens yet. But that era definitely gets me interested.
Well, it's the beginning of the thing you cherish the most in Star Wars, and that's Jedi and using the Force.
Absolutely.
So to see where that originates from, I mean, I'm right with you. It really is difficult to pick any of these. You just forced me to pick one. But
yes.
I mean, to see where it all began, like I love origin stories. I love seeing how things began. That's what we get with all the superhero movies. We get the origin story for superheroes we've never seen before. So, yeah, it's going to be amazing. But I did have the questions which you kind of touched on, like 25,000 years ago. Did they have space travel back then? Did they have light speed travel? Did they have, because try to relate that to our own universe, our own world here. I mean, humans have only been around for whatever, 10,000 years. And we only really, our technological boom really only happened over the last 100 years. And we're not in space yet. Like, we're not flying around space yet. So the fact that Star Wars Galaxy, if they have space travel 25,000 years ago, they were a super advanced galaxy of civilizations more than we are here. And I mean, yeah, I know it's all fiction, it's all made up and make believe, but I'm just trying to, I mean, for us, Star Wars is very real. I'm just trying to relate that to our real world versus what we see in the Star Wars world. And it blows me away that they could have technology way back then. But then you also think, as a fun ha-ha moment, okay, well, if 25,000 years ago they had spaceships and they're flying through hyperspace and stuff, then why are the ships now, 25,000 years now in our timeline, still so rickety and old? And, like, why haven't they been modernized and smooth and sleek? When you look at a Star Destroyer, or you look
there's some that are like that. I mean, obviously the rich people have different, the wealthy have different vehicles and things like that. So I think, and again, we've only seen a fraction of what the galaxy has to offer. I mean, there's thousands and thousands of systems as part of the Republic.
Yeah.
I mean, how many planets can we name? I can probably name 50 maybe, if that.
And that's
that we know about.
Of them.
But that, we're talking about a small percentage of the galaxy that we even have explored. Yeah. And then you've got wild space and unknown regions and all that stuff. So I can see, and think about how long, I mean, we've talked about this a little bit. How long has it taken Coruscant to become this massive city with all these levels? That doesn't take a couple thousand years. You're talking thousands and thousands of years
of that thing being built level upon level upon level. Yeah.
Yeah. So I can see where there is a government back then. There is, somewhat communication with other planets and some organizations. They're probably in the process of still finding new worlds and bringing new worlds into the Republic and things like that. So that part interests me as well. Not only the Jedi side of things, but the state of the galaxy, how they've grown, how they've maintained and kept the peace and things like that. So I am definitely interested in all that. I hope that we can get more similar to what they're doing in the High Republic, is just a lot of content just kind of centered around that era. So the other question, though, is the flip side of this is there an era that's on here that you feel like we can maybe take a break from, or maybe we don't need stories from that era? Is there anything like that?
That's a tough question for a passionate fan like me to answer, because I am not tired of Star Wars. I am not one of those guys that complains that we're getting too much or enough with the Skywalker story and whatever. Like, I want more and more and more. I mean, I'm looking at this. The Age of Rebellion is the original trilogy timeline. I could spend another 10 years hanging out in that time period. Let's fill in the Han and Chewie adventures. Let's see, Anakin grow up and see what more is happening with him and Obi-Wan, and let's see Obi-Wan's story. I mean, let's see the transition from him. What's that?
There's no Obi-Wan in the Age of Rebellion. Remember, he's dead at that point.
Yeah. Okay. So even using Obi-Wan as an example, let's see him from when because we saw in his own show, he's protecting young Luke, he's protecting young Leia. Well, let's see the next 10 years of that story, because they're both just kids. Let's see what he's doing in that time. There's nothing that I'm actually tired of. I could watch all of it all the time, but I think if I had to pick one that's maybe the one that I'm least interested in, would be somewhere in the Fall of the Jedi timeline, the prequel series. I think because I love Anakin and Anakin's story from that point forward, I'm heavily interested, but before Anakin comes around, it's just a little too heavily political for me, where I get a little bit bored with all the heavy Senate politics and that kind of stuff. So I think that would be my least interest. I would still love it and still want to watch it, but I would rank that one on the lowest on the list.
Okay. It's funny because for me, it's honestly between the original trilogy and the sequel trilogy.
The time we're in right now with Mando and Ahsoka and all of that.
No, that's New Republic.
That's New Republic is Mando. Oh, so
but that's between 6 and 7.
Okay.
So I'm saying the original trilogy, so from 4 to 6, and then the Rise of the First Order is from 7 to 9. And it's weird because it kind of came and went. So I'm probably saying I don't really need more from the sequel trilogy era. We're getting, like you said, Mando and Ahsoka and things like that to fill in the gaps between 6 and 7, which I'm very interested in. I'm very interested in The Mandalorian, and
that's a big gap, man. That's
20
plus years. Yeah,
where Ahsoka's going. Is Thrawn coming in this thing? I'm definitely interested in that, but the stuff towards episode 7, 8, 9, the First Order. Even in there's not many years between there, right? Because I think all of that takes place within a year. The 7, 8, 9 all takes place. So there's not much to even really go there, but
that's a good point, actually. Yeah, the time of it.
Yeah. But I don't think they're going to go there with any more stories. So I'm glad that maybe that chapter is kind of done.
Yeah.
There's still a lot of questions I feel like that still needs to be answered leading up to episode 7, which I think they're going to be doing. And then, of course, now we've got answers that are coming for what does Rey do, like you said, beyond episode 9.
Yeah.
So to me, that era right now, looking at it, that era has been probably my least interesting era. Even though there's definitely parts of the sequel trilogy I like. Yeah. But looking at these other eras, there's definitely stories and things I'd rather be interested in than that.
Okay. Well, you make a good point with the sequel trilogy taking place over such a short amount of time. So I think maybe a little bit of time leading up to Force Awakens and maybe a little bit of time right after the Rise of Skywalker, maybe that small time gap before and after I'd be interested in, because Force Awakens, we get introduced to all these new characters. Well, what was Poe Dameron doing up to that point that he joins the fight? Like, I'd like to learn his story a little bit more. And
so there's a book on that.
Is there? Okay. So things like that. Like I'm talking like visual, if there's things that we could see, that would be, I wouldn't mind seeing a bit of that. So, I mean, I haven't watched the Resistance cartoon yet. We're getting to it. So maybe that fills in a bit of that time for me too.
No, that's all. I mean, it kind of tells a little bit of a side story of other characters around that time. So there's nothing, there's a little bit of Poe in it. There's a lot of BB-8 in it.
Yeah.
But there is a couple books before that, like Bloodline, where it kind of explains Leia's situation. Shadow of the Sith finally came out, which sets up a lot of episode 7 with Luke and Han and their quest to find Exegol and Ochi Bastoon. So there's definitely novels out there already. That's where I kind of come in with this, is that I feel like a lot of those questions that I had are answered enough for me to understand where they're kind of how they built 7, 8, 9. So I'm fairly okay with that era right now. But if there's any kind of an animated show or live action show that comes out of that, I'd be happy to experience it. Sure.
Yeah.
But I think I feel like Lucasfilm is also even kind of moving away from that era now, especially with the introduction of these.
Right. It's going to depend on how successful the new stuff is too. Like,
totally.
Let's tell some stories away from the 9 movies that we have. Are they going to do well?
Yeah.
If they do well, then they'll be like, good decision. But if they don't do well, they'll be thinking, oh, maybe we should have went back to that era that people love so much and keep telling more of those stories. I mean, we're going to get more of it. I mean, we're in the New Republic era right now with Mando and Ahsoka and all that. So we got a lot of stories coming for the next couple of years.
Yes.
To fill in that time gap. So
yeah, right now we're prominent in right now. We're in the New Republic era. We're in the Reign of the Empire era, and we're in the High Republic era.
With what's out there right now, yeah.
What's out there right now. And the High Republic, I think, it was truly their test market. Can we actually go into a different era outside of the Skywalker saga and people be interested in? And it's only been in publication right now. Obviously, the big test is going to be the Acolyte, because that takes place during the High Republic era.
Okay.
I think that's going to be a big test. But as far as the publication goes, I think it's been fairly successful. I think a lot of people have been talking good things about the High Republic. It's got a lot of good characters, good storylines. So I think that was a good test. Now, that's why I think these have been introduced, and there's going to be more content, both on the publication side as well as the Disney Plus side, and even movies now that are going to tap into these eras. So, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I only read the one High Republic book, so I only know a little bit about it, but it was good. Yeah, it was interesting. So
yeah, it's a pretty big deep dive. I'm still finding my way through phase 1 as well. Phase 2 is what's out there now. Phase 3 is about to start later this year, and then finish up. So there's a lot of content there.
There is.
Okay. Good talk there. I think the last thing I want to say, Martin, since it is Star Wars Day, I guess, just a quick thought from you about Star Wars in general. Just maybe talk about. I basically asked Hannah this question on the other show. I basically said, kind of said something like, just describe for a minute what Star Wars, what is it about Star Wars that just keeps you interested in it? Is, this long, and why do you keep exploring new and all the new stuff and exciting stories that we're getting from it? What is it specifically about it?
Oh man, how long you want the show to go?
That's why it's got to be specific.
That's a deep answer. Like I don't know. It's wizards and warriors in space. I mean, I grew up playing Dungeons and Dragons. I have there's two fandoms that I'm extremely passionate about. The sword and sorcery fantasy type stuff like Conan the Barbarian and Dungeons and Dragons, and then the space adventure stuff like Star Wars, like Star Trek, like any space. And that it didn't matter what it was. When I was a kid, those, I'm old enough to remember going to the video store and renting VHS tapes. Mm-hmm. That's the only two things I would bring home. Fantasy movies or space movies. I just love getting lost in an adventure that's something I can't do here and now in my real life. So I like to disappear into those escapes, basically. Now, Star Wars in particular, it's the characters. I mean, Luke Skywalker, Princess Leia, it doesn't matter. Those original characters that I saw when I was 7 years old, they, like all of us, no matter what ages we're at, we all have that specific group of characters that hits home so deeply, and you love that thing for the rest of your life. And that's what Star Wars was. And, because I didn't get to see Star Wars in the theaters, but it came out on VHS. I watched it at home, and I got to go to Empire Strikes Back on my birthday to watch it. I got to have a birthday party in the movie theater and watch Empire. I mean, just to be waiting for the continuation of what's happened to Luke, where's Han and Leia and all that. And it opens up on Hoth with this big snow scene and the Battle of Hoth. Like, I'll never, ever forget that movie experience. There's not been an experience anywhere close to what I felt when watching those scenes as a young kid. And that kind of stuff sticks with you. I mean, it doesn't even matter that Lucas's writing wasn't always the best. It doesn't matter. He created such an amazing universe to just continually grow and expand. I mean, that's another draw to Star Wars, is that it will never stop. There's no ending to it. It can continue to grow.
Mm-hmm.
new characters, new stories. You're talking about another galaxy a long time ago, like it's just endless. And I think that's also a draw. You never have to say goodbye to these characters and to these things. But I mean, it's a dream. Like flying. We always talk about our favorite ships. I love the X-wing fighter. Just getting to pretend to be an X-wing fighter and watching someone else pilot that thing around. I mean, it just pulls at everything I fantasize about, and I don't know if that's kind of the answer you're looking for, but
Yeah,
Star
no,
Wars
that's exactly
just it never stops for me. Like I am still that same 7-year-old kid inside. Every time I see R2D2 roll across the screen and do a little chirping and beeping, that 7-year-old kid just melts. Oh, I love R2. I feel that way. It never stops.
No.
I cannot think of any other franchise that has that type of emotional reaction. Nothing.
True. That's very true.
Not even Marvel.
No.
So,
No.
I mean, like,
Good answer.
you guys can't see what I have on my desk here, but I mean,
Yeah,
there's
that
R2
too.
right there, right?
Yes.
He's right here with me all the time.
Yep.
So, and if you guys can see the background here, like I don't care.
Yeah.
I'm 50 years old and I got Star Wars stuff everywhere. It's passion. Like there is not a fandom I'm more passionate about.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
Same here. Yeah. Well said. Well said on this Star Wars day. I talk a lot about my feelings on it on the other show, so I won't repeat myself.
No, give me a nutshell version. Like I just gave you a super long one. Give us a nutshell version.
My nutshell is, my nutshell is I'm a pretty spiritual guy, and that's why the Force and Jedis have always been my attraction to Star Wars. The whole in Episode 4, the first movie, when it talks about the mysteries of the Force and this essence that binds us all together, and it felt very spiritual. It felt very something that you had to have faith in. That's something you had to believe in. And it was really intriguing that this thing could help you, defeat evil and fight evil. And then the whole aspect of the dark side, obviously, is the bad side of things. So that struggle there was always intriguing to me. But then ultimately, in the end, and a couple of years ago, you had Filoni come out and talk about how Star Wars was about family. It was about hope. And I'm really big on family, with not just my family, but my friends that I consider family. And it's true. Every story you look at Star Wars, it's all about a group of people that become a family. Rebels, Clone Wars, the prequels, the sequels. It's all about these groups of people. And that's really, man, I think subliminally that's what it drew me in as well. But anything that has to do with, and of course I'm a big sci-fi person. I love space, the exploration of space and the idea of traveling to different planets is just so. But in the end, I love Filoni's description about family and about hope. That is Star Wars, and that's what that drives a lot of my life is, family and the hope that we can overcome, that we can beat the evil that's out there. And Star Wars just does that. And you don't have to like it all, but man, there's a lot of good in it. There's a lot of good stuff in there.
Totally.
So.
Yeah, here. And I mean, even just to add on to what I said, like this past weekend, I was up at Calgary Expo, which is like Comic-Con. It's Canada's Comic-Cons. I got to meet Emily Swallow, who plays the armorer in The Mandalorian.
Yes.
When you get an experience like I had with her, I got to spend 15 minutes roughly with her twice. Just me and her, just hanging out, talking, sharing stories, asking questions, whatever. I was in my own private little bubble with her. The rest of the world disappeared. She's talking to me. We're laughing. We're joking. You get an experience like that, and that just solidifies your passion for Star Wars. When one of the characters that you love is now talking to you, and you're within 2 feet of her, that's an experience you can't ever forget.
Yeah. Totally.
I mean, those few moments I spent with her are my favorite expo experiences of all time, and I've been going to them for 15 years. It was amazing. So
that's awesome.
yeah.
Yeah. It is great. I've had a couple of those moments with like Tom Kane, who voiced Yoda. He was such a pleasure to talk to. Unfortunately, he's out of the business now. And Greg Grunberg, who played Snap Wexley, was able to hang out with him. Very similar to you with Emily. We were able to just, not even on camera or anything, and talk. We just talked about life and things like that. So, yeah, very fun moments with people like that. So
Totally.
that have been there and done it within the Star Wars universe. Yeah.
Just adds to it all.
It does. Yep. Okay. Well, thanks, Martin, for joining me on this.
Yeah, it's episode. A quick one. We don't usually have them this short.
I know, right? This isn't The Mandalore.
Yeah.
Which, go check out The Mandalore. I think Martin's putting out an episode of The Mandalore here on Star Wars Day as well.
Yep. Be our bonus Expo coverage.
The Expo, right? Yeah, the Expo coverage.
Yeah.
And then look for more episodes there. We're going to dive into the Ahsoka trailer coming up. We're going to
Visions
be in Star Wars Visions as well. That's right. Mm-hmm. Yep. Which is out there now. So go check that out on Disney Plus. Excited about that. So that's it. Enjoy Star Wars Day, everybody. Thanks, Martin.
Sure you watch
always.
Something Star Wars. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yep. Thanks, everybody. Take care. As always, subscribe here on YouTube for all these videos, but hit us up on the podcast feed, get all of our weekly shows there. And we will see you next time. For Cyber Ren, I'm Dave Cottingham. Take care, everybody. May the Force be with you.